The conference hall on Sanctuary Prime gleamed with bioluminescent panels that shifted through colors no human eye had ever witnessed in nature. Dr. Helena Reeves stood at the center of the circular chamber, her presentation hologram rotating slowly above her outstretched palm. Around her, arranged in ascending tiers like an ancient amphitheater, sat the representatives of the Galactic Medical Council, beings of crystalline silicon, flowing energy, and genetic perfection that had taken millennia to achieve. Helena had rehearsed this moment for months. She was 53 years old, had pioneered the cure for pancreatic cancer, and had personally overseen the eradication of malaria from Earth's remaining endemic zones. Her credentials were impeccable by human standards. She truly believed, that humanity deserved a place among the galaxy's medical elite. She was about to learn how profoundly wrong she was. The presentation concluded with humanity's proudest achievement. Average human lifespan now reached 150 years, triple what it had been 3 centuries prior. Helena smiled, confident, as the hologram faded. Director Genter of the Quarith rose from his seat. His body was a magnificent lattice of living crystal that caught and refracted the room's light into rainbow cascades. When he spoke, his voice resonated like wind chimes in a hurricane. Helena's translator implant rendered his words with clinical precision. Dr. Reeves, this council has reviewed your species' medical practices. We must deny your application. Helena's smile faltered. I don't understand. Our achievements speak for themselves. Your achievements are adequate for a species still in developmental stages, interrupted Physician Prime Salnira of the Velthara. She was tall and graceful, her skin possessing an opalescent quality that marked her as third-generation genetically perfected. But your methods are barbaric. You cut into living bodies with metal instruments. You poison your patients with radiation and toxic chemicals. You accept mortality as inevitable. We accept reality as inevitable, Helena countered, feeling her pulse quicken. Death comes for all biological organisms eventually. Our medicine works with that reality, which is precisely why your species is not ready, Genter continued. His crystalline face showed no emotion, but Helena's implant detected something in his harmonic patterns. Pity, perhaps, or disgust. The Velthara eliminated death from disease 43 centuries ago. The Kryn achieved perfect cellular regeneration. The Talvek transcended physical vulnerability entirely. You celebrate extending life to 150 years. Our shortest-lived member species averages 4,000. Another council member spoke, a Kryn whose chitinous body bore the iridescent patterns of a master physician. Your surgical procedures are of particular concern. You deliberately damage tissue to access internal structures. This is not healing, this is controlled destruction. Sometimes you have to damage to repair, Helena said, struggling to keep her voice level. A tumor must be removed, an appendix must be extracted. These aren't acts of destruction, they're interventions that save lives. They are primitive solutions to problems that advanced medicine has rendered obsolete, Salnira replied. Her tone was not cruel, merely factual, which somehow made it worse. We do not cut, we do not poison. We do not accept that any patient must die. Helena felt her hands clenching at her sides. She forced them to relax. With respect, Physician Prime, you speak from the privilege of species that engineered away their vulnerabilities millennia ago. Humanity is still climbing that mountain. Our medicine is tested against real, present threats. We face diseases you've forgotten existed. We treat injuries you can't imagine sustaining. Perhaps that gives us perspective you've lost. The chamber fell silent. Helena realized, too late, that she had crossed a line. Genter's crystals dimmed slightly. Dr. Reeves, this council appreciates Earth's enthusiasm. But until your species evolves beyond experimental butchery, you are forbidden from practicing medicine on any non-human species. Human medical credentials will not be recognized in galactic institutions. Human pharmaceuticals are banned from interspecies trade. This council cannot endorse such crude practices. The vote is unanimous, Salnira added. Application denied. Helena stood alone in the center of the chamber as the council members filed out. She had crossed 200 light years to be humiliated. Her hands were shaking. She was a doctor, had been since she was 25 years old, had saved thousands of lives, and these beings had just called her a butcher. The worst part was the voice in the back of her mind, small but persistent, that wondered if they were right. 50 years passed. The galaxy continued its perfect existence. On Velthara Prime, children were born without genetic defects because genetic defects had been edited out of the species' genome 4,000 years prior. On the Quarith homeworld, injuries were repaired through harmonic resonance that restructured crystal matrices at the molecular level. The Kryn healed through hive-mind cellular regeneration. The Talvek simply reformed damaged energy patterns. Medical schools across the galaxy had become, essentially, engineering programs. Students learned to calibrate nanobots, adjust genetic sequences, and optimize biological systems that were already nearly perfect. Emergency medicine was a historical curiosity. Trauma surgery was something studied in anthropology courses about primitive species. Disease, that ancient enemy of biological life, had been so thoroughly conquered that most galactic citizens had never seen someone die from illness. Death, when it came, arrived after thousands of years of life, peaceful and predetermined. On Earth, Dr. Marcus Webb taught surgery to students at Johns Hopkins Interstellar. He was 102 years old, his hair white, his hands still steady. He had trained under Helena Reeves before she died, and he carried her frustration like a torch. "The Velthara think we're barbarians," he told his students, demonstrating a thoracotomy on a synthetic cadaver. "They're right, surgery is barbaric. You're taking a knife to a living person. But sometimes barbarism is what saves lives. The galaxy forgot that. We can't afford to." Dr. Yuki Tanaka ran the Solar Disease Control Center from a facility on Luna. She was 98, had survived 3 pandemics, and maintained a network of monitoring stations across human space. Her team tracked mutations, analyzed outbreak patterns, and maintained humanity's biological defenses. It was necessary work that the rest of the galaxy considered paranoid. "They think disease is extinct," she told her deputy during a routine briefing. "It's not, it's dormant. They've optimized their immune systems to perfection, which means they've lost the ability to adapt. We're still vulnerable, which means we're still practiced." Dr. Amira Hassan specialized in battlefield medicine. She was 73, had served in the border conflicts, and had once performed an amputation in zero gravity with a laser cutter and improvised anesthetic. She taught combat medics techniques the galaxy considered medieval. "Out here, you don't have nanobots," she told recruits. "You don't have genetic repair protocols. You have your hands, your supplies, and your training. Master the basics because the basics work when everything else fails." Humanity continued its crude, primitive, barbaric medical practices. The galaxy continued to consider them inferior. And then on a perfect autumn day on Velthara Prime, a child named Kelnira began to die. The symptoms started subtly: weakness, fatigue. Kelnira's parents, both high-level physicians, ran genetic scans that showed nothing wrong. The child's engineered perfection was intact, yet the weakness grew. Within 3 days, Kelnira developed a fever. The Velthara had not experienced fever in 4,000 years. Medical databases had to reach back to historical archives to even define the term. Temperature regulation was one of the first systems optimized. Fever was impossible, yet Kelnira burned. Physician Master Thelver, the finest medical mind of his generation, examined the child personally. His instruments showed something that made his perfect heart skip its engineered beat. Kelnira's genetic structure was degrading. The careful modifications that made the Velthara superior to their ancient ancestors were unraveling base pair by base pair. "This is impossible," Thelver whispered. But impossible things have a way of not caring about what advanced species believe. Within a week, there were 12 cases on Velthara Prime. Within 2 weeks, 300. Within a month, the pathogen, they called it the unraveling for lack of a better term, had spread to 4 other worlds. The Quarith found their crystal matrices cracking from within. The Kryn discovered their regeneration protocols failing, leaving injuries that actually scarred. The Talvek watched in horror as their energy patterns destabilized. The galaxy's medical systems, refined over millennia to maintain perfection, suddenly faced an enemy they had forgotten how to fight: uncontrolled disease. Galactic epidemiologists identified the pathogen quickly. It was unlike anything in their databases, a hybrid entity that specifically targeted genetic modifications and enhancement technologies. It mimicked improved cells so perfectly that engineered immune systems couldn't distinguish friend from foe. It fed on the very perfection that made advanced species superior, turning strength into vulnerability. The Velthara's optimized immune response amplified the infection. The Quarith's harmonic healing resonated with the pathogen's frequency, accelerating crystal degradation. The Kryn's hive regeneration protocols spread the disease faster. Every advantage became a liability. Thelver worked 18-hour days searching for a cure. Every approach failed. Nanobots couldn't target the pathogen without destroying healthy cells. Genetic repair protocols accelerated the unraveling. Medications that should have worked had no effect. He was the finest medical mind of his generation, trained in techniques perfected over 40 centuries, and he was helpless. Kelnira died on the 43rd day of the outbreak. The child was 8 years old and should have lived for millennia. Thelver stood beside the bed, staring at his hands, hands that had never failed before, hands trained to maintain perfection, hands that had forgotten how to fight. The numbers grew worse. Within 3 months, 400 million dead across 47 species. Hospitals overflowed with patients experiencing symptoms their doctors had only seen in historical texts. Pain. Uncontrolled pain, something most species had eliminated through genetic modification. Suffering without nanobots to modulate neural responses. Fear of death, real and immediate, in beings who had believed themselves beyond mortality's reach. Medical schools across the galaxy scrambled to teach skills that had atrophied over millennia. Emergency medicine. Crisis intervention. How to function when your tools failed and your training proved inadequate. Young doctors who had never watched a patient die now watched dozens die daily. The psychological toll was catastrophic. 6 months into the plague, physician Prime Salnira called an emergency session of the Galactic Medical Council. She was 89 now, by human reckoning, though her Velthara physiology meant she should have been in her prime for another 3 millennia. The plague had aged her. Her opalescent skin showed cracks. Her movements were slower. She was dying like everyone else, and all her species' perfection couldn't stop it. "We must contact Earth," she said. The chamber erupted. Council members argued in 36 languages and harmonic frequencies simultaneously. The translator systems struggled to keep up. "They're primitives," someone shouted. "They practice butchery," another added. "We would be admitting inferiority." Director Genter, his crystal body showing stress fractures from his own infection, raised a hand. The chamber fell silent. 50 years ago, I voted to reject humanity's application. I called their medicine crude. I was correct in my assessment. Human medicine is crude. It is also exactly what we need. You propose we beg the primitives for help, a Kryn physician demanded. I propose we acknowledge reality, Genter replied. This pathogen targets perfection. We have spent millennia eliminating our vulnerabilities, and in doing so, we eliminated our ability to adapt. Humans never achieve perfection. They remain vulnerable to disease, to injury, to death itself. But that means they still know how to fight these things. Pride is a luxury we can no longer afford. Salnira stood, swaying slightly. I have lost 412 patients in the last month. I have watched children die. I have watched colleagues die. I am dying. Our methods do not work because this disease was designed to exploit our methods. Humanity's medicine may be barbaric, but barbarism may be precisely what this situation requires. The vote was close, 25 to 22. The Council authorized contact with Earth. The message arrived at UN Medical Command on a Tuesday morning. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, now director of the Solar Disease Control Center, read it 3 times. The wording was careful, avoiding the word help, instead requesting consultation and alternative perspectives. The subtext was clear. The perfect species needed the primitives. Tanaka called an emergency meeting of Earth's senior medical leadership. Dr. Marcus Webb attended via hologram from Johns Hopkins, his elderly face filling the screen. Dr. Amira Hassan joined from a hospital ship near the border. Dr. James Okonkwo, humanity's leading oncologist, connected from the Luna Cancer Research Center. Dr. Lena Volkov, infectious disease specialist, appeared from the CDC facility in Atlanta. They rejected us 50 years ago, Hassan said immediately. Called us butchers. Now they want our help. 400 million dead, Tanaka replied. Their estimate, and that was last week. The number is higher now. Let them die in their perfect hospitals, someone suggested. Several others murmured agreement. Webb's hologram leaned forward. At 102, he was the oldest person in the meeting. His voice carried weight. Listen to yourselves. We're doctors. People are dying. Yes, they insulted us. Yes, they rejected us. That doesn't matter. You don't practice medicine for recognition. You practice it because suffering exists and you have the skills to fight it. That's what separates us from them. They made medicine about perfection. We never forgot it's about saving lives, even when it's ugly. Silence filled the conference room. What if we fail? Okonkwo asked quietly. What if our methods don't work? Then we fail, Webb replied. But we try. That's the difference between a doctor and an engineer. An engineer builds perfect systems. A doctor fights in imperfect conditions. They need fighters now. We're what they've got. Tanaka drafted the response personally. We will help. Be advised, our methods will seem brutal by your standards. Mortality rates will remain high initially. We cannot promise a perfect cure. We can only promise to fight. If you accept these terms, we're coming. The reply came within an hour. We accept. 200 human doctors arrived at Sanctuary Prime 3 weeks later. They brought equipment that made the Galactic physicians recoil. Scalpels, bone saws, radiation projectors, chemical compounds with toxic warning labels. They brought paper charts because human medicine had never fully trusted digital systems after the AI medical disaster of 2156. They brought knowledge earned through 10,000 years of fighting disease without the benefit of genetic perfection. Dr. Helena Reeves would have been proud. The team was led by Webb, Hassan, Tanaka, Okonkwo, and Volkov, all carrying forward the work she had started. Physician Master Thelver met them in the landing bay. He was dying, his perfect genetics crumbling, and he knew it. He looked at the human equipment with barely concealed horror. This is what you brought. This is what works, Hassan replied. She was 73, gray-haired, and carried herself like someone who had survived 3 wars. Take us to your patients. The first examination took place in what had been Velthara Prime's finest medical center. The facility was designed for precision care of already perfect patients. It had never anticipated mass casualties. Overflow beds lined the hallways. The air recyclers couldn't quite eliminate the smell of disease, a smell that shouldn't have existed on a world that conquered illness 40 centuries ago. Hassan approached a Velthara patient in critical condition. She did something no galactic doctor had done in 3,000 years. She touched the patient with her bare hands, checking pulse at the wrist, then the neck, pressing fingers against the abdomen, listening to breathing. A physical examination. Thelver watched in fascination and revulsion. This is direct contact. You're transmitting bacteria. You're causing stress to damaged tissue. I'm gathering information your scanners miss, Hassan replied, not looking up. Your instruments look for perfect metrics. I'm looking for what's actually wrong. She continued the examination, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. This patient has a secondary infection. Bacterial, probably introduced through compromised epithelial integrity. Your scanners didn't catch it because they're looking for genetic markers, not opportunistic pathogens. How can you possibly know that from touching? Temperature differential in the lower left quadrant. Muscular tension indicating pain response. Respiratory pattern suggesting systemic inflammation. Hassan straightened. Your patient has 2 problems, the plague and an infection that's taking advantage of a weakened immune system. You've been trying to cure everything at once. We need to treat what we can treat while supporting the body's fight against what we can't. Thelver stared at her. Support? We don't. What does that mean? It means keeping the patient alive while their body does the actual healing, Webb said, approaching with a medical kit that looked like it belonged in a museum. You've forgotten that bodies can heal themselves. You've been using technology to do all the work, but this pathogen attacks your technology. We're going back to basics. Over the next week, the human doctors implemented protocols that shocked the galactic medical establishment. Hassan instituted triage. She walked through the overwhelmed hospitals, evaluating patients with quick efficiency, marking them with colored tags. Red, immediate intervention needed and survivable. Yellow, serious but stable. Green, minor treatment. Black, beyond saving, comfort care only. You're deciding who lives, a Quarith doctor asked, horrified. I'm deciding who I treat first so more people survive overall, Hassan replied. You have 50 critical patients and 10 doctors. You can try to save everyone and lose 40, or you can prioritize and save 30. Welcome to emergency medicine. Tanaka implemented quarantine measures that were draconian by galactic standards. Hard lockdowns, families separated, trade routes closed. She did it without apology. Your soft quarantines failed because this pathogen spreads faster than your contact tracing. We're burning fire breaks. It's not pretty, but it works. Okonkwo introduced chemotherapy-style treatments, controlled poisoning that killed the pathogen slightly faster than it killed the patient. The mortality rate was 30%. For patients who were dying anyway, it was a chance. Galactic doctors watched in horror as humans deliberately harmed patients in the hope of saving them. You're torturing them, a Velthara physician accused. We're giving them a fighting chance, Okonkwo replied calmly. Yes, the treatment is toxic. Yes, some will die from it, but everyone in the critical ward dies without it. 30% mortality is better than 100%. Webb performed the first surgery on a Velthara patient since the species' emergence from their genetic engineering chrysalis 4 millennia ago. The patient had an abscess, a pocket of infected tissue that was killing her. Galactic doctors had tried everything: nanobots, genetic repair, cellular regeneration. Nothing worked. Webb sterilized his instruments, made his incision, and physically removed the infected tissue. The procedure took 40 minutes. He sutured the incision closed with actual thread. It was butchery by galactic standards. The patient survived. Word spread through the medical community. The human methods were working. Not perfectly. People still died, mortality rates remained high, but they were working better than anything else the galaxy had tried. Volkov made the breakthrough 3 months after the human team arrived. She had been studying the pathogen around the clock, approaching it not as an engineer trying to design a perfect counter, but as an epidemiologist trying to understand an enemy. It's not an external pathogen, she announced at a joint human-galactic medical conference. It's derived from your own genetic engineering tools, specifically from the viral vectors used to implement modifications. It's a mutation that went rogue, probably incubating in some genetic research facility for decades before reaching critical mass. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. You created your own destroyer, Tanaka added. You engineered yourselves to perfection, and the tools you used evolved into something that feeds on that perfection. It's not attacking you despite your modifications, it's attacking you because of them. Thelver stood slowly. He had lost 30 pounds, his opalescent skin was gray, and his hands shook. He was dying from the disease his own species' hubris had created. Then we cannot be cured. Our enhancements are fundamental to our biology. Removing them would make you vulnerable, Webb interrupted. Like humans, you'd face disease, injury, aging, death from causes you eliminated millennia ago. Yes. That's the cure. Controlled degradation of your genetic enhancements, supplemented by aggressive antiviral therapy and surgical intervention when necessary. You're asking us to become primitive, Salnira whispered. She was in a wheelchair now, her body failing. We're offering you survival, Hassan said bluntly. Die perfect or live imperfect. Those are your options. The treatment protocol was brutal. Aggressive antivirals that damaged liver function. Surgical removal of infected tissue when necessary. Months of supportive care while the body adapted to being vulnerable again. The mortality rate was 8%, higher than any galactic medical procedure in living memory. It was also 8% instead of 100%. The first survivors emerged changed. Velthara, who would now age, who would need ongoing medical care, who would face the diseases their ancestors had eliminated. Some chose death rather than accept imperfection. Others chose life, embraced their new vulnerability, and began learning what humanity had never forgot: how to be mortal. The galaxy transformed over the following years. The plague was contained. Billions were saved. But the survivors were different now, scarred, vulnerable, aware of their own mortality in ways their species hadn't been for millennia. Medical education underwent a revolution. Human doctors became the most sought-after instructors in the galaxy. Emergency medicine, trauma surgery, battlefield care, skills that had atrophied over the ages became required training. The galaxy maintained unmodified populations on every world, preserving genetic diversity and medical challenges to keep skills sharp. Physician Master Thelver survived. He had accepted the treatment early, endured the antiviral protocols, and emerged on the other side diminished. He would age now. He would die someday, perhaps in a few centuries rather than millennia. He stood in front of his medical students, a class that included 3 humans, and taught them lessons his own teachers had never needed to learn. The unraveling taught us that perfection is fragile, he said. We optimized ourselves for a universe without threats. When a threat emerged, we were defenseless. The humans remained capable because they never achieved perfection. They remained practiced because they never stopped fighting. Medicine is not about achieving an ideal state. It is about constant struggle against entropy, disease, and death. The moment you stop struggling, you lose the ability to fight. On Sanctuary Prime, a monument was erected in the plaza outside the Galactic Medical Council chambers. It depicted Dr. Webb performing surgery on a Velthara patient, his hands steady, his expression focused. The inscription read, "They taught us that medicine is not about achieving perfection. It is about fighting for life when perfection fails." The dedication ceremony drew representatives from every member species. Salnira attended in a hoverchair, her body ravaged by the plague and the treatment that saved her. She would live perhaps another century, a fraction of her expected lifespan. She approached the statue slowly, trailing medical equipment. A human doctor stood beside her. Dr. Helena Reeves' granddaughter, carrying on the family tradition. Young, only 35, recently graduated from Johns Hopkins Interstellar. "Your grandmother stood before the council 50 years ago," Salnira said quietly. "We called her work barbaric. We rejected her. I voted to reject her." "I know," the young doctor replied. "We were wrong." Salnira's voice cracked. "We achieved perfection and lost the ability to survive imperfection. Your grandmother understood something we forgot. Medicine is not engineering. It is not about creating ideal systems. It is about fighting in non-ideal conditions." "She knew," the young doctor said. "She died knowing. But she also told me near the end that she understood why you rejected her. You had eliminated the need for what we do. You couldn't comprehend medicine as warfare because you'd won all the wars. It took a new enemy to remind you." Salnira looked up at the statue. Webb's bronze face was set in concentration, his hands in the midst of saving a life. "How many of you died learning these skills?" "All of us, eventually," the young doctor replied. "We have a saying, medicine is lessons written in blood. Every technique we teach, someone died to teach us. Every protocol we follow, someone died showing us it was necessary. You wanted to eliminate death. We accepted and learned from it. A harsh philosophy. A realistic one." Salnira nodded slowly. Behind them, the dedication ceremony began. Speakers praised human medicine, thanked the doctors who saved billions, and spoke of a new era of galactic cooperation. The young doctor prepared to leave, but Salnira grasped her hand. "Promise me something," the physician prime said. "Promise you'll keep teaching us, keep reminding us that perfection is a trap, that vulnerability is necessary, that the struggle is what keeps us alive." "We promise," the young doctor said. "It's what we do." 10 years after the plague, Dr. Marcus Webb died at age 112. He had lived to see human medicine become the galactic standard, had trained 3 generations of doctors across a dozen species, and had performed the first successful cross-species surgery. His funeral was attended by representatives from every member species of the Galactic Medical Council. The humans buried him on Earth, in a cemetery overlooking the ocean. Thelver attended, his aging body requiring assistance in Earth's gravity. He stood at the grave and spoke words in accented English. Humans remain what they have always been, imperfect, vulnerable, mortal. And because of these limitations, when the galaxy faced an enemy that exploited our perfections, only humanity knew how to fight. Dr. Webb once told me that the difference between a doctor and an engineer is that an engineer builds perfect systems while a doctor fights in imperfect conditions. The galaxy needed engineers for 40 centuries. Then for one terrible period we needed fighters, we needed doctors, we needed humans. He placed a crystal on the grave, one grown in his own body, a piece of himself given in respect. Thank you for teaching us how to be mortal again. The galaxy continued turning. The plague became history, studied in medical schools as a reminder of what could happen when species forgot to remain vigilant. Human doctors spread across the stars, teaching emergency medicine to species who had forgotten what emergencies were, teaching trauma care to species who had eliminated trauma, teaching the ancient art of fighting death with imperfect tools and determination. On Earth, in medical schools and hospitals, young doctors learned the same lessons their ancestors had learned. That medicine is warfare, that perfection is fragile, that the struggle against entropy never ends. They learned to suture and to cut, to diagnose with their hands and trust their instincts, to accept that some patients die and keep fighting anyway. The galaxy had reached for perfection and touched it, and found that perfection was brittle. Humanity never reached that high, remained grounded in reality and limitation and mortality. And when the perfect species needed saving, it was the imperfect ones who knew how. 50 years after Helena Reeves was rejected, her granddaughter stood before the Galactic Medical Council presenting humanity's achievements. But this time, she was not applying for membership. She was there to accept the Council's highest honor and to teach the assembled representatives a new course, Introduction to Emergency Medicine. The galaxy had finally learned what humanity always knew. That medicine is not about eliminating the fight. It is about being ready when the fight comes. And the fight always comes.